the crime scene clues, the medical evidence, the films, photos, and audio recordings. What does forensic science tell us about the greatest murder mystery in American history?
John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was shot and killed on November 22nd, 1963, while riding in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. And in a very real sense, that is the only thing on which there is universal agreement.
History, the final judge of our deeds. Let us go forth to lead the land we love.
The murder of a president, the most heinous of crimes. But the handling of this investigation defied today's standards for forensic science. Hello, I'm Greta Van Susteren. Welcome to JFK Case Not Closed. This hour, a never-before-seen look at the case through the eyes of crime scene and medical investigators. We've got the exclusive story of how the feds recently dusted off an old piece of evidence and actually tested it. And the Dallas police audio, the crime caught on tape. Our full-blown examination of the evidence shows this 40-year-old case may not be closed. We begin on November 22nd, 1963.
There's Mrs. Kennedy, and the crowd yells, "And the President of the United States."
The door opened and out stepped Miss Kennedy, who looked beautiful, just like everybody expected, and then the handsome young president coming out behind her.
The sun was bright. The sky was beautiful. The clouds had dispersed.
Texas Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie traveled with the Kennedys.
The crowd at the airport was several thousand people. President Miss Kennedy walked up and down the fence where people gathered.
That he wanted to be close to the people that were around him.
Retired motorcycle officer Bobby Hargis.
Secret Service like they had a conniption fit. Oh, I mean, they was just like cats on a hot tin roof. He walked out in the middle of a crowd shaking hands.
Bill and Gail Newman were the closest eyewitnesses to the assassination.
We had just gone where the crowd had thinned out at the corner so that the kids could get next to the curb.
There were at least 250,000 people on that parade route. We were heaving a sigh of relief because once we got through the motorcade in Dallas and through the Dallas luncheon, then everything else was pretty much routine.
And I remember seeing the motorcade turn onto Houston Street, turn right onto Houston Street and go that short block.
I turned around to the president and I said, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." That was just as we were approaching the book depository.
The motorcade then turned left onto Elm Street.
Made the left turn, and I was getting up my assigned position, and when that first shot rang out.
He went to Dallas. It was very much a political trip.
Presidential historian Robert Dallek.
Kennedy wanted to go to Texas to mend political fences in order to pull the Democratic Party together. Of course, Texas had a reputation, in Dallas in particular, for being anti-Kennedy country.
And Kennedy's support of civil rights, the Bay of Pigs fiasco, the Russian-Cuban Missile Crisis, and his war on organized crime created enemies as well. And then there was an ex-Marine who had defected to Russia. The FBI knew he was in Dallas. They knew he worked in a building along the motorcade route. They knew he was involved in anti-government protests. But they failed to alert the Dallas police or the Secret Service.
It should have been transparent to the FBI that here's a man, Lee Harvey Oswald, with a record of having lived in the Soviet Union, a staunch radical, was member of what was called Fair Play for Cuba Committee, and they neglected to track his whereabouts.
I turned to see if I could catch a sight of the president out of the corner of my eye, because I thought it was a rifle shot. About the time I turned back, I was hit. I was knocked over, just doubled over by the force of the bullet. I said, "No, no, no, no. My God, they're going to kill us all." Immediately, I could see I was just drenched with blood.
I heard Miss Kennedy say they have shot my husband. Then I heard a third shot and felt matter, cover us. And she said,
I've got his brains in my hand. I heard that. I was still conscious. I heard Roy Kellerman say to Bill Greer, the driver, and perhaps to others, get out of here fast. And that's all that was said in that car.
it was just a silent, terrible drive.
The film of the assassination you just saw was shot by bystander Abraham Zapruder with an 8mm home movie camera like this. The Zapruder film is the best photographic evidence from that day, but other films were analyzed for clues by forensic experts. This 8mm movie was shot by bystander Robert Hughes. It shows the Kennedy motorcade approaching the Texas School Book Depository. Now look closely. In the window of the 6th floor, you can just make out a shadowy figure. Could it be the assassin? Up next, how the forensic crime scene investigation would be considered botched by today's CSI teams.
The captioning for this program is brought to you by...
Introducing the ultimate in moisturizing. New Gold Bond Ultimate Healing Lotion with 7 intensive moisturizers. New Gold Bond Ultimate Healing Lotion. Ultimate moisturizing. Ultimate care.
It's coming.
It's about to get very cold in here.
The best movie of the summer becomes the DVD of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what this said? X2 on DVD November 25th.
New from Ricola. Nature's protection with extra vitamin C. To help strengthen your immune system. Naturally.
Ricola! Okay, remember, we're just checking out prices.
So no matter what they say, we're not buying yet.
Right. What's running through your veins?
Ice water.
Right. Can't face it.
So with Circuit City's Price Match Plus, you're covered on price.
We'll take it.
Go ahead, take it. If you find a lower price within 30 days of purchase, we'll give you back 110% of the price difference. Circuit City, we're with you.
Nice game face.
You didn't even see it coming.
At BASF, we don't make the seats. We make them more comfortable. We don't make the lipstick. We make it brighter. We don't make the jacket. We make it warmer. We don't make the floor, we make it tougher. We don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF.
Bill, let's go poolside and check in on that stressed out fellow who used Orbitz to book a hotel in sunny San Diego. Destination Orbitz.
Sweet Nirvana. Great hotel, room service. Biggest decision of the day, massage at 3 o'clock. Or 4.
Someone's changed his name to Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky.
Like I always say, sir, give a customer the right hotel at the right price and they won't have a worry in the world.
Another mission accomplished, Neil.
President Kennedy's assassination turned Dealey Plaza and the Texas School Book Depository's 6th floor into the world's most famous crime scene. Today, thousands of tourists visit the mysterious sniper's nest at the 6th floor museum. But in 1963, crime scene investigation was not a sophisticated forensic science, and glaring mistakes were made. Mistakes that led to confusion for the investigators and fodder for conspiracy theorists.
Police believe that the man who fired the shots is still in the Texas School Book Depository building.
And there are like 67 or 68 different people who've been named as being in Dealey Plaza to do bodily harm to President Kennedy.
Gary Mack is the curator for the 6th floor museum.
Some people thought that a shot might have come from the triple underpass, the grassy knoll, the picket fence area. Of course, the book depository, the Daltex building, the Dallas County Records building.
Retired motorcycle officer Clyde Haygood recalls 3 shots.
There was one shot, and then there's seconds of pause, and then there was 2 additional shots that was closer together.
Retired motorcycle officer Bobby Hargis rode next to Jackie Kennedy in the motorcade and remembers only 2 shots.
When the second shot hit the president, it was loud, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It was a plume of blood in his brain matter that I rode through. I couldn't help it. It was all over my motorcycle, my helmet.
Bill turned to me and he said, "That's it, hit the ground." So we turned and put the children on the grass behind us and shielded them with our body because we didn't know. We thought the shots had come from over our head behind us.
Behind them was the grassy knoll. Conspiracy theorists claim evidence of assassins was either destroyed or overlooked.
It was just a mass chaos. There's a lot of people was looking and pointing up at Triple Underpass. The only person that I seen that I recognized as being a railroad detective, there was nothing else in the yard.
They had found 3 spent shells under that window up there where the shooting occurred.
Lieutenant Carl Day was the crime scene investigator for the Dallas police in 1963. He describes the 6th floor overrun with police and federal agents.
After the shooting, FBI, Secret Service, and a bunch of deputy sheriffs, they were all searching through that building like a bunch of ants trying to find something.
How would the crime scene be handled today? Investigators from Dr. Sarah Weck's Allegheny County Coroner's Office describe the forensic methods they use.
Well, it's necessary that you contain the crime scene. That is to confine it to as few people as possible.
Tom Myers is a crime scene investigator. He explains what should have been done at the time.
To slowly, methodically, and meticulously investigate, starting with the entrance into that particular room and working your way to the window where you suspect that the bullet was fired.
Even more surprising and disturbing for crime scene investigators, reporters and photographers had access to the crime scene when the rifle was found. The weapon was a 1940 Italian-made 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano. Analysts showed faint prints on the rifle's stock and trigger guard. Lieutenant Day concluded the prints were Oswald's, but they were old.
It looked fairly good, but they weren't taking much of the powder, which indicated they had been there for some time.
You cannot determine the age of a fingerprint.
Wayne Retzel is a latent fingerprint expert. He reviewed Lieutenant Carl Day's notes regarding Oswald's fingerprints.
I think he really states his conclusion that he had a gut feeling that the fingerprints were a match and would pursue the suspect. He just didn't know if they matched.
Today, such valuable evidence would have been kept in tight security. But when the rifle was showcased at police headquarters, basic forensic precautions were not used.
I picked it up with a strap and held it there as a poor way to handle evidence.
Within hours of the assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for the shooting of Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, not for shooting the president.
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet.
Investigators soon learned Oswald had been employed at the Texas School Book Depository, and he had been seen in the second-floor lunchroom moments after the assassination. If he was the assassin, Oswald would have had to walk across the entire length of the 6th floor and down 4 flights of stairs in 1 minute and 18 seconds.
Potentially there are shoe print evidence that could be found. This is an old book repository, and there would probably be a lot of dust and debris on the floor. We would look for fibers and hairs and any physiological fluid that we might find. Once that evidence is detected, those samples would then be transported into the DNA laboratory for DNA analysis.
DNA, the genetic fingerprint now used by forensic investigations to prove guilt or innocence, was not available until 1985. It could have been instrumental to the investigation in 1963 in a number of ways.
The firearm itself could have contained nucleated material. Any bullets or fragments that were recovered in any of the bodies could have been examined. The clothing of the individuals that were wearing, whether it be Kennedy's or Connolly's clothing articles, could be looked at for potential DNA evidence.
Although their clothing is still held in a secure location, John Connolly's suit could never be used for DNA analysis due to a very surprising mistake. His wife Nellie had the governor's suit with bullet holes and blood stains dry cleaned, and she hand laundered his shirt. And, as seen in these photos, still another mistake. Secret Service agents cleaned up the bloody back portion of Kennedy's limousine while installing the convertible's top outside Parkland Hospital.
You never clean up the crime scene until after all documentation and all collection is completed. Bullet fragments could have been found in the car. Different types of blood or fibers or hairs could have been destroyed or contaminated. Those are all no-nos and should not have been done.
The department's hands were tied when the Secret Service and FBI took over the crime scene, leaving the Dallas PD to take the heat. Our fingerprint examiner says Lieutenant Day did the best he could given the pressure he was under. And up next, the president's autopsy. More mistakes, more fuel for conspiracy.
There's a place where the air is fresh, the wind is cool, and the curves are exciting, where all convertibles are turbocharged, and the sun has a very hard time keeping up. The all-new Saab 9-3 convertible. This is the state of independence, and here, convertibles deliver more than just a great view. Welcome. Visit your Saab dealer today.
On the road and stuck trying to get business email in all the wrong places? Get Verizon Wireless Remote Email Access. Stay productive and in touch when you're away from the office.
Can you hear me now? Good.
Now ask how you can save up to $200 on select wireless PDAs and BlackBerry devices.
Verizon Wireless. We never stop working for you.
Great relationships aren't great without a little excitement, just like coffee isn't coffee without Coffee Mate. So velvety smooth. So many flavors, from hazelnut to creamy chocolate. Spark things up and keep it delicious. Coffee Mate from Nestle. Coffee's perfect mate.
To play the blues, you have to understand pain.
Less pain, less blood. On your fingers or your arm. One Touch Ultra. Results in 5 seconds.
You want to feel it here, not here.
One Touch Ultra.
Welcome to La Strada Ristorante in Randolph. At La Strada, you'll be treated to an elegant yet romantic atmosphere in their main dining room, or unwind with a relaxing cocktail at the bar. La Strada also has a private dining room for parties or special occasions. And of course, La Strada boasts exquisite Italian cuisine.
We come to La Strada often for the hospitality, the atmosphere, and the great food.
La Strada Ristorante, 1105 Route 10 East, Randolph.
Fitness Made Simple videos are reshaping bodies and changing lives.
Unlike all the quick fix pills, potions, and gadgets that reduce our wallets more than our waistlines, Fitness Made Simple is real, and it delivers real results.
It really works.
I start and end my day with Fitness Made Simple. It works for me.
That was me 70 pounds ago. This is me now.
Fitness Made Simple works. It worked for me, it's working for thousands of men and women nationwide, and it can work for you too.
Order today and get 2 videos for the price of 1.
You are about to see President Kennedy's autopsy photographs and x-rays. Beware, the medical photos may be gruesome, but this forensic evidence reveals vital information about the integrity of the autopsy.
I saw a large gaping hole in the back half of the skull.
Even though they knew death was imminent, Dr. Robert McClelland worked with other ER doctors to try and save Kennedy's life.
When they began to loosen the tie, they saw this tiny little wound right at the central part of the neck where you make a tracheostomy incision. So that's where they made the incision and simply enlarged that wound.
It looked like a bullet had entered here.
Audrey Bell was the supervising nurse and eyewitness to the procedures going on in the ER.
Somebody said it looks like an entry wound.
It was a small wound, and entrance wounds tend to be small, not always, but usually.
Conspiracy theorists have cited their comments as evidence of a second gunman, an assassin who fired from the front.
The casket carrying the body of President Kennedy is being transferred to an ambulance.
Kennedy's coffin landed at Andrews Air Force Base and then traveled by ambulance to Bethesda Naval Hospital for the autopsy. But the knowledge that a wound in the front neck had been covered up by the tracheostomy did not travel with the president's body.
Hoover told us to stay with the body.
FBI agent Francis O'Neill and his partner Jim Siebert took notes of the procedures that evening.
I think the first incision was somewhere around 8 o'clock. The president's face was absolutely perfect. It was apparent that there was a tracheotomy there performed.
Humes and Boswell, who had never done a single medical legal autopsy in their entire careers, who had never done a single gunshot wound case, were the two pathologists in charge.
Dr. Sarah Weck, an early critic of the autopsy report, was also the lone dissenting member of the 1978 House Committee's forensic panel.
It wasn't until the next day when they called down to Parkland Hospital and spoke with Dr. Malcolm Perry, the surgeon, that they learned now for the first time that there was a bullet hole in the front of the neck that they had missed, thinking that it was only a tracheostomy. Now they had a real problem.
Jim and I assisted in turning the body over. In fact, it was Jim who pointed and said, "What's that thing there?" Humes probed with his finger, first of all. No point of exit. And then he probed with a small surgical probe. No point of exit.
The doctors were baffled. Then a call came in from the FBI. A, quote, pristine bullet had been found on a stretcher in Dallas. Could it have fallen out of Kennedy's back as doctors tried to save him with cardiac massage?
And the doctor said, "Well, there's no question about it. That's what happened. That is it."
Relieved, Humes went no further. And over the last 40 years, the integrity of the autopsy has come into question because the paths of the bullets were never properly traced.
There were a lot of forces afoot at that time, and some people wanted to protect the memory of President Kennedy.
Dr. Charles Petty was a member of the forensic panel for the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
The autopsy report that was released did not describe the adrenal glands, as I recall it.
The order was, do not talk about the adrenal glands. The family and the doctors knew. President Kennedy suffered from Addison's disease.
Originally diagnosed when he was 30 years old, this debilitating and potentially deadly disease was a family secret.
If it were revealed as to how many medical problems he had, it would inevitably call into question the honesty of the Kennedy family, and particularly Robert Kennedy, who was ambitious for high office and the presidency.
Doctors attending the autopsy were required to sign secrecy oaths.
The autopsy was a controlled military undertaking. It was not a scientific endeavor.
There were pictures taken, there were x-rays taken. We saw the inside of the skull. There's a portion of the brain still there.
Agent O'Neill saw the president's wounded brain up close and noted some important details about bullet fragments found in the skull.
Those two pieces we got out were not minuscule, they were big enough to measure. They were consistent with the rifle bullets that were found in the 6th floor of the depository.
The 3 shell casings found on the 6th floor were hard-nosed bullets, full metal jacket military rounds. Although O'Neill is convinced Oswald acted alone, his additional observations of other fragments on head x-rays are consistent with another type of ammunition.
There were 38 particles in that skull, large enough to count, large enough to show up in an x-ray. They would be more consistent with what we called in the, in the Bureau or the police department, a dum-dum bullet that exploded after it hit.
The small white particles representing what we refer to as a snowflake dispersal pattern is more consistent with a bullet that is designed to fragment. It is not consistent with military-type ammunition, such as is alleged to have been used by Lee Harvey Oswald.
That compelling evidence led Dr. Weck to form this conclusion.
I believe that there was a second gunshot wound to the head.
After a visit to the National Archives in 1972, Weck told the New York Times that assassination evidence was missing.
The missing photographs and the missing x-rays and the missing brain and the missing microscopic slides, you know, you don't have to be the least bit paranoid, suspicious, or cynical to ask yourself, what is this all about?
Up next, the Warren Commission tackles the murder of the century, and a magic bullet is born. But investigators were not allowed to examine some of the real evidence. So how can the theory still stick? We'll have the answer coming up.
GMC Sierra Extended Cab with more standard V8 horsepower than the new Ford F-150. Try as they might, they still can't catch us. Professional-grade engineering. It's not more than you need, just more than you're used to. Sierra is the only full-size pickup available with OnStar.
I moved to Earthlink because they hate internet pollution as much as I do.
I moved because they block pop-ups, and I'll take all the help I can get.
Because Spam Blocker keeps my inbox neat and clean.
Different people, different passions, different reasons for moving to Earthlink, like our pop-up blocker and spam blocker tools. They block almost all pop-ups and spam. Call 1-800-EARTHLINK. Get 6 months of dial-up service featuring Earthlink Accelerator at half price. Move to Earthlink. It revolves around you.
Looking for some inspiring new ideas for decorating, gift giving, and sprucing up your home this holiday?
Start right here. Call or click now to order your free copy of our new Holiday Inspirations catalog, filled with over 250 ideas to give and get excited about.
Like this versatile Ryobi 5-tool kit, only from the Home Depot. With 18 volts of rechargeable power, it's made to take on all kinds of cutting, drilling, and driving projects. It can even light up and clean up a work site, all for just $169. Order now and get free shipping.
And for folks who'd rather choose it themselves, you can't beat the Home Depot gift card. Thousands of possibilities all wrapped into one. So call, click, or visit your home for holiday inspiration today.
The Home Depot. You can do it. We can help.
Monday, Terry Schiavo trapped in a vegetative state for 13 years. Now, in an exclusive interview, her parents speak out over their battle to keep their daughter alive, only on Hannity and Combs. Then at 10, Greta's gone inside the Peterson hearing. Now, in a Fox News Channel exclusive, she takes you inside the Peterson house, from the evidence to the crime scene. Greta has the exclusive photos of Scott and Lacey's home. Watch On the Record. It all happens on Monday, only on Fox News Channel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paige Hopkins. Funerals were held today for some of the victims of Saturday's car bombings in Turkey. 23 people died in the explosions outside 2 Istanbul synagogues. In the meantime, Al-Qaeda is claiming responsibility for the deadly car bombs. A London-based newspaper says it received an email believed to be from the terrorist network taking credit for the attacks. Turkish police say it's very likely the bombings were the work of international terrorists. And in Afghanistan, a United Nations worker has been shot to death. A man on a motorcycle opened fire on a 29-year-old French woman who was riding in a clearly marked UN car. She's the first staff member to be killed in Afghanistan since the fall of the Taliban regime in 2001. 2 men have been arrested in the attack and have been identified as members of the Taliban. President Bush supporting a tentative bill that would reform the nation's Medicare program. The president says he will actively push Congress to pass the legislation, which includes better prescription drug benefits for older Americans. The plan also encourages employers to maintain drug coverage for retirees. After a 3-day trip to Japan, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is now in South Korea. He's set to speak with the country's president about the 3,000 troops South Korea is expected to send to help rebuild Iraq. The Bush administration previously asked South Korea for a force of about 10,000 soldiers. And Christmas comes a little early at the box office. Elf, towering over the competition, the Christmas comedy starring Will Ferrell took in just over $27 million in its second week at the box office. Russell Crowe's Master and Commander sailing in second place with $25.7 million. Rounding out the top 5, The Matrix Revolutions, Disney's Brother Bear, and Looney Tunes back in action. At Large with Geraldo Rivera is at the top of the hour. JFK Case Not Closed continues right now. That's here on the network America Trusts for fair and balanced news. Fox.
Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man.
This is the basement floor of the Dallas City Hall.
Oswald has been shot.
Lee Oswald.
Any hope of a murder trial came to a screeching halt when the only suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, was shot and killed on live TV. So President Johnson appointed the Warren Commission to conduct an official investigation. Their most controversial finding involved the path of a single bullet.
This is that single bullet, Warren Commission Exhibit 399. To many, it is known as the pristine bullet. Over the last 40 years, no part of the Warren Commission's 26-volume report has been scrutinized and criticized more than the single bullet theory and how Arlen Specter devised it.
A critical factor is where the bullet entered on the president's body, and sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
Senator Arlen Specter was a junior counsel for the Warren Commission.
In terms of the single bullet theory, that was what the commission concluded at the end, but that was not the first theory that the commission was working with. Is that right?
Well, the first speculation was from the FBI and Secret Service reports that there were 3 bullets, and the first one hit the president in the back of the neck, and the second one hit the governor, and the third one hit the president in the back of the head.
That's not my report.
FBI agent Francis O'Neill took notes at the autopsy and says investigators were mistaken from the very beginning.
My report said nothing about the first one hitting him in the neck whatsoever. I don't know where he got that from.
Agent O'Neill's report states that the first bullet wound to the president struck below the shoulder and 2 inches to the right of the spinal column. The autopsy photo confirms this, but Specter didn't get to see the photos. He had to use drawings prepared under the direction of Commander Humes 4 months after the autopsy. Surprisingly, even Humes didn't get to see the photographs. The drawings were based on his memory.
Any investigator would want to see the photos and the x-rays, and the commission did not have them out of deference to the Kennedy family, but I thought that was a major mistake.
Prophetically, in April of 1964, Specter wrote this memo, quote, "Someday someone may compare the films with the artist's drawings and find a significant error."
I saw a limousine emerge from the crowd. It had 2 flags on the front fenders. As I stood here for a second or two, I heard a pop. And my first thought was, who in the world is throwing a firecracker with the president driving by?
The government's first theory fell apart when eyewitness James Tague came forward.
And then I heard the crack of 2 rifle shots. I stood here stunned for a moment. Reached up, touched my face. There was a couple drops of blood.
Tague was hit by a ricochet of a bullet that missed the limousine.
The bullet had hit the curb right here, which, as you can see, is in a direct line with the 6th floor and the president's car circling down Elm Street. This caused the Warren Commission to take a new look at their theory that all 3 bullets had hit in the limousine, because they now had 1 missed shot.
The investigation was deficient in every material way you could imagine. In a sense, it was just a PR job.
Gary Cornwell, the deputy chief counsel for the 1978 House Select Committee on Assassinations, is no fan of the Warren Commission or FBI Director Hoover.
On Sunday, the day that Oswald was killed by Jack Ruby, the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, had a conversation with President Johnson, in which he said, "The thing I am most concerned about is having something issued to convince the American public that Lee Harvey Oswald was the assassin."
Cornwell says it was Hoover who directed the Warren Commission away from investigating conspiracy.
Hoover ran the FBI with an iron hand. Hoover was never going to allow the FBI to uncover evidence that would have impeached his own conclusion. And of course, whenever conspiracy evidence came to their attention, they basically either said it was uncredible or dropped it like a hot potato.
When we come back, the creator of the single bullet theory casting some doubt on the infamous theory.
We carry thousands of clocks, but I could still use more time, especially when it comes to paying bills.
Introducing the Platinum Business Credit Card, an American Express card that lets small businesses pay over time.
When bills come in, it's nice to know the clock isn't ticking.
Apply now. There's no annual fee, no interest for the first 9 months, plus the benefits of Open, the small business network.
It's great getting more time without having to wind something up.
The Platinum Business Credit Card. Call 1-800-NOW-OPEN to apply.
So, Dan, do we have everything we need for this meeting?
It's all right here, sir.
Is your data backup as reliable as it should be?
Don't worry, sir. He told me everything.
Ours is. Bright Store Storage Software from Computer Associates.
The experts at Hotels.com know exactly how close all the places are to where you want to stay. All at the best price. Hotels.com. Best prices, best places, guaranteed.
A friend told me about Prevacid. So I called the number and they sent me a certificate for a week's worth free.
Call today for a Prevacid free trial offer. Then ask your doctor if prescription Prevacid is right for you.
If you like butter, you'll love Smart Balance buttery spreads. Smart Balance was judged the best tasting in the soft vegetable spread category by the American Culinary Institute. Smart Balance buttery spreads. We have the right balance and the great taste.
The Warren Commission needed the single bullet theory desperately, because without it you have to have two assassins.
When bystander James Tagg came forward with a bullet wound to the cheek, everything changed for the Warren Commission. They needed to somehow prove one single bullet could do the work of 2, 3, or more bullets.
President Kennedy was hit in the back of the neck.
Arlen Specter describes in his own words how this one bullet traveled through 2 men, causing a total of 7 wounds.
Passed between 2 large strap muscles, hit nothing solid, sliced his trachea, exited, nicked his thigh. The bullet entered slightly to the left of the governor's right armpit, exited from his chest, leaving a 4-inch hole under his right nipple, went through his wrist and lodged in his thigh.
Yes, Lee Harvey Oswald could have done that.
Robert Keenan is a sniper with the Pittsburgh Police SWAT team. Like Lee Harvey Oswald, he's a former Marine sharpshooter. He test-fired a similar Mannlicher Carcano rifle on a target range and has been to the crime scene at Dealey Plaza.
When you actually stand there and look at it and you see the distances, and being a sniper, you notice distances right away. It's a very makeable shot.
We did on-site tests. We went down to Dallas one day and had a similar car and people about the same size as the president and the governor, and we had the Mannlicher Carcano mounted, and I looked through the 4-power scope.
The Warren Commission also did extensive ballistic tests by firing bullets into live goats, human cadavers, and other objects to help confirm its lone gunman theory. To illustrate the single bullet theory, Fox News created a computer model of the Texas School Book Depository and Dealey Plaza. The best photographic evidence, the Zapruder film, was a guide. But the Zapruder film is not a complete record due to the simple fact that, for a second, a freeway sign hides the presidential limo. What happened behind that sign has been the subject of much conjecture because it is the only place the Warren Commission could line up the bodies for their theory to work. Dr. Michael Baden, former chairman of the 1978 House Select Committee's forensic panel, helped align the correct positions for both Kennedy and Conley.
These x-rays were obtained from the National Archives and are copies of x-rays of Governor Connolly's chest and wrist before he was operated upon at Parkland Hospital.
Baden explains how Commission Exhibit 399 remained pristine after passing through both Kennedy and Conley.
The bullet stayed perfectly intact after hitting the rib. No evidence of any damage to the bullet on the x-ray of the chest, although there is evidence of damage to the bullet on the x-ray of the wrist. If one does not accept the single bullet theory, then one is left with a very undefendable position that there had to be at least 6 bullets fired by at least 3 different people.
The single bullet theory is undoubtedly the single greatest forensic scientific hoax ever perpetrated upon mankind.
Fox News decided to take a look at the single bullet theory by asking its biggest critic, forensic pathologist Dr. Sarah Weck, to assemble a three-dimensional model using 2 skeletons and red glow rods. Weck shows how, with the help of the Zapruder film, the path of the pristine bullet had to be magical.
Now, the single bullet theory has that bullet entering Kennedy. It has an upward angle of 11 to 12 degrees. His arms are up to his throat. His wife is looking at him. Clearly, she is aware that something has happened. Somehow, when the bullet came out of the president's neck, slightly upward, it proceeded over to the right and somewhat downward. In order for Connally to be hit behind the right armpit, that bullet had to have come back over somehow, stopped and turned, and then come in to Connally's right posterior armpit area. Went through the right lung. It shattered 4 inches of this right fifth rib. It came out, went into the back of the governor's wrist. This man, at this point, has been shot through the chest. The wrist has been shattered. He continues to hold his hat, and then it exited from the front of the governor's wrist, and it came down, and it hit the left femur, and somehow bounced back out through the same hole in the skin onto the stretcher. Now, that's the story of the Warren Commission report. You got a bullet that goes up when it's supposed to be going down, got a bullet going right when it's supposed to be going left.
It is physically and technically possible, and it is far more likely than any of the other theories.
Former President Gerald Ford, now 90 years old, is the only surviving member of the Warren Commission.
I think it's the most likely answer as to what happened.
What level of certainty do you have that there were only the 3 shots fired from the 6th floor?
Reasonable certainty.
Is that 100%?
Well, I wouldn't want to categorize anything as 100%.
When we come back, the assassination caught on audio tape. You'll hear forensic analysis put to the test. The shocking details when we return.
It was fast. We made it faster. It was smart. We made it smarter. Until it was as close to perfect as it's ever come. And that's saying something. Introducing the new, more powerful ES330.
How did Lincoln Mercury become such a powerful force in SUVs? Diversification. Save now during the SUV drive-away sales event on the big, bold Lincoln Navigator, the spirited Lincoln Aviator, or choose Mercury Mountaineer with leather seating services for $329 a month RCO with $13.99 down payment due at signing. Hurry, the SUV drive-away ends soon at your tri-state Lincoln Mercury dealer.
You think about the conditions people have to drive in, how they're not always perfect. Then you build the 2004 Volvos with electronically controlled all-wheel drive for confidence on any road.
It goes from 0 to 60 in an eyebrow-raising 6.42 seconds, which makes it the perfect car for stop-and-go driving. The 2004 Lincoln LS V8 Sport. Drive one now for $439 a month with $19.99 down payment due at signing. Travel well. See your Tri-State Lincoln Mercury dealer today.
The Kennedy assassination case was cold until 1978 when new audio evidence was discovered. Some people think this could be the smoking gun. Listen and decide.
Dealey Plaza is surrounded by tall buildings, and loud sounds create echoes. The echoes confuse the ear witnesses, and so investigators turn to the photographic evidence for clues.
Most news organizations were shooting silent film. Sound was very expensive, very cumbersome. Amateur cameras did not have soundtracks at all.
Gary Mack discovered new evidence in 1978.
As it turns out, the Dallas Police radio broadcasts may include the sound of the shooting. See this little spike to the right of the yellow line? Right there? To the right? Yes. That's the first shot.
Standard procedure for the Dallas Police in 1963 was to record and archive communications between dispatchers at headquarters and officers in the field.
There's the second shot, 1.6 seconds later.
Channel 1 was recorded by the dictaphone.
James Bowles, now a sheriff for Dallas County, supervised communications for the Dallas Police in 1963.
It records by making an impression into the plastic belt.
Fox News Channel acquired a first-generation copy of the Channel 1 and Channel 2 recordings and provided the facility for digital preservation.
I'm clear.
Although most of the audio consisted of short bursts, one of the Dallas motorcycle officers had his microphone stuck in the send or open position. If that mic was indeed in Dealey Plaza, it could have transmitted the sounds of the assassination. On the recordings, voice, static, and a single bell tone can be heard, not the sound of gunshots. But experts found that audio echo patterns, or acoustic fingerprints of the gunshots, can be seen and analyzed on an oscilloscope. In 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassination's forensic audio experts compared the Dallas Police audio with recordings of test shots.
What we actually found are 6 patterns.
Gary Cornwell was the deputy chief counsel for the committee.
When we sealed off Dealey Plaza to do those tests, we didn't have unlimited time to fire live ammunition from every place in Dealey Plaza. So we only fired it from the 2 most probable locations based on other evidence. That matched 4 patterns, 3 from the book depository, roughly, and 1 from the grassy knoll.
A gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Dodd.
On the final day of the committee hearings, the acoustic experts showed this version of the Zapruder film. Using their findings, they added sound.
Acoustical evidence potential is great, but they converted it and perverted it to achieve their purposes.
James Bowles acknowledges that there was an open mic, but contends that it could not have picked up the sounds of gunshots.
It was 4 miles from Dealey Plaza. I came out with that information immediately. They didn't buy it because it didn't fit their bill. They were seeking a second shooter. To prove a second shooter, they had to have a 4th shot.
I didn't do any acoustical testing. I didn't set up any microphones. I didn't do any recordings. What I did was simply evaluate the research that had been done by the acoustical experts and by their critics.
D.B. Thomas wrote a peer-reviewed article on the acoustic evidence for the British Forensic Science Society in 2001. His analysis of probabilities overwhelmingly supports a shot from the grassy knoll.
What is the probability that by pure accident you could generate a random pattern that would match to the echo pattern of a gunshot from the grassy knoll? It turns out the odds of that happening are about 100,000 to 1 against.
There is one other mystery involving the Dallas police recordings. If solved, it would confirm that the open mic was in Dealey Plaza.
That's the bell. There was a bell in Dealey Plaza, and it apparently was picked up by the open microphone.
Today, there is no bell in or around Dealey Plaza. And although some people think the bell is just another of the audio anomalies, Gary Mack found evidence that he says proves otherwise.
On the first anniversary, a local news crew using a sound film camera in Dealey Plaza at 1 o'clock, the time of the president's death, while the camera is rolling, the bell sounded. And it's almost the same tone that you hear in the Dallas Police radio broadcast. As best I can tell, the Dallas Police recordings may be the smoking gun. I just don't know of any hard evidence that's ever going to move this case one way or the other than the acoustics evidence.
A friend told me about Prevacid. So I called the number and they sent me a certificate for a week's worth free.
Call today for a Prevacid free trial offer. Then ask your doctor if prescription Prevacid is right for you.
Right now, all Goodyear tires are on sale. That's right, all of them. And when you buy 4 selected Goodyear tires, you get up to $75 cash. So hurry in and pick out a winner.
In my dream, I'm on a game show.
Welcome back to On Demand, where it's time for round 2. And the question is, the efficiency of 342 cases of green Argyle socks. Correct. Your customers...
2,000 SKUs.
You don't know the answers?
It's like they know what's coming.
Where? Maple Avenue.
What does it mean?
You're playing catch-up because you're not responsive. You need your answers faster.
Hi, Susan. I'm Frank's friend, Steve.
Of course you are.
Nice to meet you.
Come on in. Dinner's almost ready.
Oh, I thought we were going out. I made reservations.
Oh, no. I made lasagna. Oh, don't worry. I used soy cheese because I know that you're lactose intolerant.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. Try this on.
Wow, you made this for me?
Yeah, I learned how to knit online. It's really no big deal. And these. And this. Okay, let's go meet my parents.
Special treatment. Bad idea for blind dates, good idea for online trading. Ameritrade Apex is our premier active trading program. Get special benefits like the latest trading tools, access to exclusive webcasts, and discounts on research products.
Hi, Steve.
Sign up now and get $100 if you qualify for Apex, plus 25 commission-free internet equity trades. Go to ameritrade.com/apex/ or call 866-368-4610.
Okay, here's the secret. We're doing something a little different. It's not news usual. Good questions, good answers, spirited debate, fair and balanced, simple. You get to hear news from every single viewpoint. On the record, it's for everybody.
The #1 cable news program at 10 Eastern on the #1 cable news channel.
It's smart TV. People love it. I'm Greta Van Susteren, and join me on the record. Today's forensic science could help fill in some of the blanks around the Kennedy assassination. We discovered one extraordinary former prosecutor who took the truth into his own hands and with the government's help, got pretty close.
There's basically no way to reopen that case except with another government inquiry. There are a lot of things that could theoretically be done. We have DNA today. We didn't have that in 1977 to 79. We have better acoustics knowledge than we did in 77 to 79.
40 years later, so many unanswered questions still remain a mystery. But one former federal prosecutor, John Orr, found a piece of evidence that made the feds think the case may not be closed.
What do you make of the Warren Commission report?
The pressure from the president and head of the FBI and some people in the Justice Department on the Warren Commission to quickly find Lee Harvey Oswald to be the sole assassin for world security.
Orr did not believe there was one gunman. Being a prosecutor, he went through the proper channels to prove his theory.
I'm one of the few private citizens who's ever been allowed to examine the magic bullet in the president's clothing.
Even more extraordinary, Orr convinced the director of the FBI in a 70-page report that further testing on the bullet fragments needed to be done.
This bullet fragment had fibers on it, which no one had ever mentioned in the official reports, and that those fibers needed to be tested.
That alleged evidence, embedded in the bullet nose from the front seat of the limo, could be consistent with the president's shirt collar and tie liner, establishing a different trajectory than the single bullet theory.
In 1998, they finally did a portion of what I asked them to do.
This was now almost 35-year-old material that had become mummified, so it had to be rehydrated.
Pathologist Dr. Michael Zimmerman, a specialist in Egyptian mummies, tested 4 tiny fragments.
And I was able to tell them that it was not only human tissue, but in fact human skin. So the next step is to get DNA from the material, and that was attempted and was not successful.
Or had asked the Justice Department to do other testing, but just the one analysis was done. Other tests could still be conducted to scientifically support or rule out a second type of ammunition.
Is there anything else that we have now in this year that could help us in this analysis we didn't have in '63?
Testing of the chemical elements has progressed substantially since then, and I think that there are clues in the bullet fragments beyond that physical clues.
Or requested skull x-rays, showing the bullet fragment between the scalp and skull be reevaluated for signs of a soft-nosed bullet. And a 3D computer recreation, like this Fox animation, could trace bullet trajectories in Dealey Plaza. But none of these tests have been done.
The government then and the government yet today is not interested in reopening the John F. Kennedy assassination. It's still too hot to handle.
I just think there are enough questions out there that they're worth going after.
Enough questions and inconsistencies still keep this case alive, not closed. History shows the preciseness of science is a sure way to separate fact from fiction. Hopefully, forensic science will help us get closer to the truth. I'm Greta Van Susteren. Thanks for watching.